There is a moment almost everyone recognizes, even if they've never put it into words. You realize that something in your life is not changing, not because you haven't tried, but because trying itself feels exhausting. You've thought about it, you've understood it. You may even know exactly where the pattern comes from, and yet, it continues. At that point, many people assume something painful, that they lack discipline, that they are avoiding effort, that something in them is broken. But neuroscience suggests a very different explanation. What feels like resistance may actually be identity doing its job. Because the self you experience, the one that feels so real, so familiar, so unquestionable, is not who you are in any essential sense. It is a prediction. And predictions don't disappear just because you want them to. By now in this series, one thing should already be clear. Your brain is not designed to show you reality as it is. It is designed to reduce uncertainty. It predicts perception. It predicts emotion. And, well, more quietly, it predicts you. The sense of me that feels continuous across time is not a fixed core. It is a model your brain uses to anticipate how life will unfold. This is not philosophy. This is not spirituality. This is the direction modern neuroscience has been moving for decades. Researchers like Antonio Damasio showed that the self is inseparable from bodily regulation. You don't have a self first and then experience emotions. Emotional and physiological signals are what give rise to the feeling of being someone at all. The self is not an object, it is an ongoing process. A process that answers one fundamental question over and over again. What kind of organism am I in this world? Am I safe or threatened? Capable or overwhelmed? Wanted or alone? In control or exposed? Each answer becomes a prediction, and repeated predictions harden into identity. This is why identity feels so real. Not because it is permanent, but because it is reliable. Your brain prefers a familiar self over an uncertain one, even if that familiar self includes anxiety, self-doubt, or limitation. Predictability feels safer than possibility. This is why people often stay loyal to identities that hurt them. I'm the anxious one. I'm the one who always struggles. I'm the one who has to try harder. I'm just not that kind of person. These are not beliefs in the usual sense. They are efficient predictions. Philosopher and cognitive scientist Andy Clark describes the self as a kind of interface, a simplified model that allows the brain to navigate overwhelming complexity. The self is not there to be true. It is there to be useful. Useful means reducing surprise, narrowing options, stabilizing expectations, conserving energy. This is why radical change feels threatening. Not because it's bad, but because it introduces uncertainty. Here's the first major self-help insight of this episode. You are not stuck because you lack motivation. You are stuck because your nervous system has learned who it expects you to be. And expectation shapes perception long before choice appears. This becomes especially clear when we look at memory. Most people think of memory as storage, as a kind of recording of the past. But neuroscience has overturned this idea completely. Memory is not retrieval. It is reconstruction. Every time you remember something, you rebuild it in the present. And you rebuild it through the lens of who you believe yourself to be now. Researchers such as Elizabeth Loftus demonstrated how easily memories can be altered, not because the brain is faulty, but because memory is designed to be adaptive, not accurate. The brain does not ask, what exactly happened? It asks, what does this mean for the future? This matters because identity feeds memory, and memory feeds identity. When you feel confident, you remember differently. When you feel threatened, the past reorganizes itself around danger. When you feel stuck, memory selectively confirms that stuckness. This is not self-sabotage. It is prediction consistency. The brain prefers coherence over change. Trauma shows this mechanism in its most intense form. Trauma is not defined by events. It is defined by overwhelm. When something happens that the nervous system cannot predict or control, the brain learns one lesson above all others. Do not let this happen again. From that moment on, identity becomes organized around protection. Neuroscientist Joseph Ledoux showed that traumatic memories are stored in systems that operate faster than conscious thought. This is why people can know they are safe and still feel threatened. The self that forms around trauma is not broken. It is adaptive. But what once protected can later constrain. Here is where many people get trapped. They try to change their identity by force. They declare new versions of themselves. They push, affirm, visualize, discipline. But the nervous system hears something very different. The current self is unsafe, and when the self feels unsafe, prediction tightens. Identity hardens. Change becomes harder, not easier. This is why most self-help advice fails at the level of identity. It treats the self as something you decide, but identity is something your brain expects. And expectations change only under one condition: safety. This is the second major self-help insight. Identity does not change through effort. It changes through reduced pressure. When pressure drops, prediction loosens. When prediction loosens, new possibilities become visible. When possibilities become visible, behavior follows naturally. This is not passive. It is biological. You may have noticed moments like this in your own life. Times when you stopped trying so hard, and something shifted. Not dramatically, quietly. A reaction softened. A habit lost its grip. A decision became easier. These moments are not accidents. They are moments when identity briefly loosened. Time plays a powerful role here. Clock time is objective, but lived time is not. Neuroscientist Mark Whitman has shown that time perception is deeply state-dependent. Anxiety stretches time. Presence compresses it. Waiting feels endless. Flow dissolves duration. Identity often lives in imagined time. I'll be okay when, I'll start when, I'll become myself after. The self gets postponed. And when the self is postponed, the present feels insufficient. Physics offers a useful metaphor here, used carefully. Physicists such as Carlo Rovelli and Lee Smolin have argued that time is not a universal background flowing independently of events. It emerges from relationships and change. In lived experience, identity works the same way. The self is not something moving through time. It is something constructed within time. And when attention is anchored only in the future or the past, the self feels unstable. This is why presence is not a spiritual ideal. It is a regulatory state. When attention returns to the present without threat, prediction error reduces. The nervous system settles. Identity becomes flexible. You don't lose yourself. You regain options. This brings us to the quiet core of this episode. The self feels real because it is predictably useful. But usefulness changes. A self that once helped you survive may now limit you. Not because it's wrong, but because it's outdated. And the nervous system does not need to be convinced of this. It needs to experience safety without that self-definition. This is the perspective explored in Quantum Reset. Not as a promise of transformation, but as an invitation to depressurize identity. Rather than asking, who do I need to become? The work shifts to, what happens when I stop reinforcing who I think I must be? When pressure drops, the system reorganizes. When the system reorganizes, identity updates. Not forcefully, naturally. If you want to explore this more slowly in written form, Quantum Reset sits with these ideas reflectively. A link to the book can be found in the description. Now comes the part most people don't expect. When identity loosens, life does not become chaotic. It becomes simpler. Choices require less effort. Reactions soften. You stop negotiating with yourself constantly. This is not because you've become someone new. It's because you've stopped defending someone old. This is the final self-help insight of the episode. Freedom is not becoming a better self. It is needing the self less. Not erasing it. Not rejecting it. Just holding it more lightly. And this is why change that lasts often feels anticlimactic. No breakthrough. No dramatic reinvention. Just a sense that things no longer require so much effort. The brain does not need to be told it has changed. It needs to experience coherence repeatedly. If you want to continue this exploration, the next episode will move even deeper, into attention, awareness, and the observer, not as mystical ideas, but as biological processes that determine what becomes real to us. Subscribing supports long-form research-based work like this and helps make space for depth in a culture that often rushes past it. You'll also find links below to the books and research that inform this episode if you want to go deeper. For now, there is nothing you need to fix. Only something you can begin to notice: how the self is being constructed, and how gently allowing it to loosen may already be enough.